Hi everyone, so some very interesting news dribbling out of Microsoft the last couple of days. It would appear that Microsoft are going to attempt to actually get ray tracing working on the Xbox One. Now, this is a really interesting kind of piece of lineage really from the gaming and computer world, that we kind of have two ways that we can do graphics on computers. We have the traditional way that we all know and love, and that basically means kind of pre-baking our lighting into the game world, so that everything has already been calculated in advance, you know, where light and shadows will fall, etc. The other way is known as ray tracing. Now what this does is, instead of calculating the light in advance, we calculate the light literally in real time. So every ray of light that is being cast into a world can interact with objects in real time, including bouncing that light into any other surface, and then in turn that light bouncing around again, just like in the real world. Now, ray tracing will give you, frankly, some of the most beautiful looking graphics you will ever see. There simply is no other comparison. And a lot of the time when you see movies, animated movies like Pixar and so on, ray tracing is being used as part of that effect to make the light feel natural. Now, where we come into gaming is ray tracing is an incredibly intensive process to do on any computer system. It doesn't matter whether you've got the most beefy machine in the world, you will still find that trying to do real-time ray tracing is incredibly intensive. So, when Microsoft say they've got a test lab up and running where they've actually got ray tracing working, and they're now trying to expand that work to see whether they can bring it to the Xbox One really as a development pipeline, I suppose, you have to get a little bit excited. And you also have to wonder how exactly they've achieved it, because even with, using dual NVIDIA graphics card with a ridiculous amount of RAM, incredibly fast processors, etc., you're still only talking 15 to 20 frames a second at best, I've seen. And this is from military quality simulators. You're still not going to get a perfect 30 frames a second, and we're a long way from seeing 60 frames a second at the moment, using equipment we currently have available. Now, that's not to say someone hasn't gone along and built some custom hardware to do ray tracing at 30 frames a second or near enough. They certainly have, but we are a long way from having that within consumer equipment. Certainly this is not something you can particularly do easily on your home computer system. So when Microsoft say that they're trying and appear to have a good result from doing this on the Xbox One, you have to wonder, how are they doing it? Now, my belief is they're using the cloud, and what they're going to do is effectively hand off the ray casting elements, where we have to measure each beam of light bouncing off an object, bouncing off another object, the shadow being cast, etc., and move that computation off to the cloud. In theory, it could be done, and because that element of calculations on the CPU or GPU is incredibly intensive, and you have to do it kind of in parallel, so you'd need a graphics card with plenty of cores on there, or streams effectively, so that what you can do is you can hand off each cast to one of these particular streams, have it processed through, then start the next one, and allows you basically to have multiple light sources all being tracked and cast in one go. Now, if you were to hand those calculations off to the cloud and have them streamed back to you in real time, you wouldn't have any real impact on CPU or GPU. Those two elements can carry on doing the majority of the thing they need to be doing, pushing pixels around the screen. There's obviously going to be a bit of an overhead from the point of view of taking that data in, incorporating it into the scene and so on, but that is going to be marginal, and I wouldn't see it being any more difficult than having to then work with pre-baked lighting within a scene as well. Effectively, it's the same thing. You're getting pre-baked lighting data from the raycast sent down to the client in near real time. Obviously, real time when you're dealing with anything that's internet connected or anything with a length of cable, you are adding latency. It might be so small as humans can't see it, but to a computer system, even 1 millisecond is an age. And so timing this information coming from the cloud down to the Xbox One and processing it, that's going to be the tricky bit, I think. And that's going to require either some kind of forward-thinking computation to know that the next set of rays that are going to be cast will be going here, here, and here, effectively like a prediction code, or they're going to have to make sure that the data is coming down so fast that there simply isn't a problem with the lag kind of being there. My bet is it's going to be something more along the prediction side of things, because you simply cannot guarantee perfect internet connectivity constantly over, say, a 1 minute period. There is always going to be some fluctuations and, network congestion. So it's going to be very interesting to see where Microsoft kind of takes this technology. We have seen games use ray tracing before. One of the last ones was Quake Wars, I think it was, quite a few years ago now, where a ray-traced version of the game engine was released. And I had it up and running, and yeah, it worked, but the frame rate was atrocious, as you might expect. It's still a very, very difficult thing to do. So really, from Microsoft's perspective, this could be their big fight back, quite honestly, because if they're able to get ray tracing working, if they're able to make that available to developers, we are going to see the quality of graphics within games leap, frankly. It is going to be like night and day, like looking at, games pre-graphics accelerators like OpenGL, Direct3D, from a time before that to actually having Direct3D, OpenGL accelerated graphics. It's going to quite literally change the industry if Microsoft can get this working. Now, Microsoft is not beyond, I'm afraid, talking about something which is effectively in their research labs and it never really making it out to general consumers in a way that we would recognise. So it'll be interesting to see if Microsoft is able to actually bring this technology to market in a way that actually works for consumers and games developers. It's certainly very, very, very interesting that Microsoft is now starting a public fight back, really, to talk about the technologies, talk about the things it's working on, and really, I suppose, to kind of try and slow down the march of Sony right now and say, hey, we might appear to be technically behind, but actually we're forward thinking. And so, things are looking up for Microsoft in many respects. They might be behind on console sales, but just maybe they're thinking far enough ahead to position the Xbox One, not just as a console for this year and next, but thinking where they're going to push the industry to over this next 6-year cycle. Potentially, they may have something Sony can't do here. Alternatively, maybe Sony is already well on its way to having ray tracing working as well. Let me know what you think in the comments. Does this really shift your opinion of what Microsoft have been up to with the Xbox One? Do these forward-looking kind of statements from them give you some encouragement that Microsoft might be still in the game, even if they aren't selling quite as many consoles as Sony?